Ladies and gentlemen, leaders and fighters for freedom and liberty and the American dream, the best is yet to come.
That's probably the most talked about moment last night from the Republican National Convention, from the RNC, as Kimberly Guilfoyle basically screamed out to the world that the best is yet to come. And that's gotten so much captivated attention from people all over the internet. But the thing is, that might not have been the key takeaway from Guilfoyle's speech. It was insanity front to back, but what AOC and many others have noted is that she really misrepresents Puerto Ricans, Puerto Rico, and their relationship to the United States. If you recall her during that speech, she noted that her mother was an immigrant from Puerto Rico. She said both of her parents were immigrants and that her mother came to the United States from Puerto Rico. But it should be clearly known by everyone that Puerto Rico is part of the United States. It's been part of the United States since the 1800s, since the late 1800s, and people in Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans, have been American citizens since 1917. So, for more than 100 years, Puerto Ricans have been American. That a Puerto Rican is not an immigrant. That when they come to the mainland, they are every bit as American as anyone else, whether an immigrant themselves or whether born there, whether having 7 generations back to, being a farmer in Virginia or something like that. They are all American citizens. And AOC covers this when she says, the woman the GOP picked as their quote-unquote proud Latina to tout the immigrant experience didn't seem to know that Puerto Rico is already part of the United States. It's quite on message because it reflects their belief that Latinos aren't real citizens, even when we are native descendants. And that's the key takeaway here. It's not just that she said this, but it's connected to the narrative last night. And the narrative last night was that we're the Republicans and we don't hate you if you're not white. They had a lot of speakers on the schedule who were Latino or Latina or African American, black people, talking about how, Donald Trump and the Republicans are the real party that stands up for minority Americans. And the Democrats, they'll take you for granted and they'll ignore you and they'll laugh at you behind your back. But it's Donald Trump. He's your real friend in the fight for a better America for yourself and your children and your grandchildren. And everyone from Tim Scott, so many others, that was the message being hammered home last night. Maybe on more than any other night, that was centered on, we are not a party only for white people. That was what their attempt was, at least, to portray that message. And so, to have Kimberly Guilfoyle up, who is mostly known for being connected to Donald Trump Jr. via a romantic relationship, she was also Gavin Newsom, the governor of California's ex-wife. She has an interesting, political history in her personal life alone. But, she's trying to tout her Latinahood, proud Latina. And she doesn't even really get what it means to be Puerto Rican. Now, there's 2 potential explanations here. One, she just doesn't understand, like a lot of people, what Puerto Rico is and isn't in relation to the United States. But if such is the case, should she really be the sort of person up there talking about the role of immigration, the opportunities of legal immigration, how immigration, when done right, can be good for the United States? That's the whole narrative the Republicans were trying to push by having her and a few other people speak last night. When immigration is done right, it works for everyone. That's the Republican line. We don't hate immigrants. We just don't want to let the floodgates open like the Democrats. That's the narrative. She's bad at that then, because Puerto Ricans aren't immigrants. But here's the thing I think is much more insidious. I think AOC is right, and I think Guilfoyle knows better. But I think that Donald Trump wants to use the discourse of Puerto Ricans as immigrants because it serves political interests. Because AOC is right. Donald Trump, behind all of this rhetoric, does not see all Americans as real Americans. He does not see them all as equal Americans. If you have a different skin tone, or if you are not Christian, or if you were not born here, in many ways, Donald Trump sees you as less than. He does not believe that all Americans are equal. There's a reason why, under his party, he's calling millions of American citizens, aka all Puerto Ricans, immigrants. There's a reason why, under his party, there's been a deluge of calls to quote-unquote deport Ilhan Omar because she's unfaithful to the country and she's ungrateful to the country. She's not a real American, because how dare an immigrant come to this country, and how dare she run for Congress, and how dare she win and then try to make things better for the country, for her constituents. How dare she? Whether it's Tucker Carlson or whether it's people on the internet, that's been a narrative about Ilhan Omar. And there's also been narratives about Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ayanna Pressley, that they should be sent back to where they came from, even though 3 of those 4 women, Tlaib, AOC, and Pressley, are native-born American citizens, every bit as born on American soil as Donald Trump or anybody else. But because they are leftists, and because they are women of color, because 2 of those women are Muslim, and because 1 of those women is a Muslim woman of color immigrant, they are not real Americans like Trump and his base. And so they want to have it both ways. And that's what I think AOC did really good at dissecting last night. They want you on the one hand to think the Republican Party is the party of opportunity for good, law-abiding, follow the rules immigrants. And it's the Democrats that want to sell out the hard-working immigrants at the expense of the fake refugees. But the fact of the matter is, while they say that, they will dehumanize and delegitimize your citizenship if you're racialized and you go against them. Even Barack Obama faced this, with Donald Trump basically saying he wasn't a real American, he didn't deserve to be president because he was a secret Kenyan Muslim. Look through the lies. They are using immigrants. And none of this is me saying that the Democratic Party doesn't, to some degree, take for granted the votes of minorities. That the rich and wealthy and well-connected in the Democratic Party, which is overwhelmingly white, does not fundamentally care about the working class and racialized people enough to do things like implement Medicare for all, which will benefit poor racialized immigrant populations more so than average. So I'm not saying that. I'm not denying that fact. But if you think for one second the Republicans aren't 10 times worse, you're lying to yourself.